Hi, I'm Chris and I'm with Jason, and we are with Console Room 2023, 10 years in the TARDIS. And
Ooh.
we're not talking about the TARDIS exactly, but this is one of the side panels on related media, and we are talking about Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. So, Tim Coulter and
I'm Jason Tucker. I am the co-chair of Console Room, and also I would say within the last 6 or 7 years, I've become a very huge Tolkien fan. Um, Almost ironically, because I did not actually like the Peter Jackson movies. Um,
ooh,
I I liked. Well, I'll talk a little bit about my history with Tolkien before we start talking about the Rings of Power, and you can talk about
yeah.
your history with Tolkien as well. I mean, my first exposure was the Rankin Bass Hobbit animated movie, but I never read the books. I'd never read The Hobbit. I never read The Lord of the Rings. I saw the Peter Jackson movies when they came out, and the Fellowship of the Ring was fine. I had no problem with the first movie. The Two Towers and Return of the King, seeing them, I saw them in the theater on opening weekend, and I thought I was gonna die sitting in that chair because the movies I was just gonna waste away because the movies were never, ever, 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 ever gonna end. Um, and then fast forward to like 2014 or 2015, and I finally read The Hobbit, and I enjoyed The Hobbit. And I don't remember when the Hobbit movies came out. I liked the first Hobbit movie. I did not like the second Hobbit movie. I
Hmm.
still haven't actually seen the third Hobbit movie. I think that while me not
Wow.
liking the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings films is kind of not common, I think a lot of people didn't like the Hobbit movies. So that's a bit more common. But I read The Hobbit. I enjoyed it. And then in 2016, I started reading The Lord of the Rings, and I really enjoyed it. Really, really enjoyed it. Since then, I've started listening to various Tolkien podcasts. I've read The Silmarillion. I felt that reading The
Oh,
Silmarillion was a bit of a life changing event for me. Um, I have read the Unfinished Tales. I've read the Book of Lost Tales parts 1 and 2. I've essentially read the first 5 volumes of the History of Middle Earth. I've been to a Tolkien conference in Iowa. So I've kind
ooh,
of gone all in on Tolkien and the Legendarium from not liking the Peter Jackson movies. And so when
that's great.
the Rings of Power started, when stuff started coming out about this, and it was going to be talking about the Second Age, I get very excited because I feel like I am, as much as I love the Lord of the Rings books themselves, I feel like I am very much a Silmarillion fan more than anything else. So tell me about your history with Tolkien.
That's that's just wonderful to hear that you're so well grounded in the larger history and mythology of this world. Um, I have not read the Silmarillion. I'm sorry.
No, that's
I
fair.
should. I
A
really
lot of
should.
people haven't.
I'm getting around to it. No, I let's see. I think I may have heard about the animated Hobbit. I've certainly seen clips of it. Um, I don't think I ever saw the whole thing. I was aware of the Lord of the Rings books um, because a lot of my friends were into D&D and various other gaming. Um, and I'd of course seen the books around in the libraries in middle school and high school. Um, I may have tried to crack open The Hobbit at some point because that was supposed to be the entry point into the whole franchise, and I could not get into it. Um, it just was not doing a whole lot for me. Um, I think it was when I was in Ann Arbor. in grad school when I had a little tiny bit of downtime to actually read large books that I was encouraged to give another try to Lord of the Rings. And I did read through all of them. I think twice.
Okay.
And very much enjoyed it. I got a little bit lost only in the section about Tom Bombadil. Otherwise, I thought it was fantastic. I enjoyed the larger kind of mythology and folklore, and especially the way Tolkien very, very deliberately uses language and names um, and words just so precisely. And that really appealed to me too. Um, and certain periods of my life, I just haven't had time to do a whole lot of reading, but I did happen to get those in um, way before the movies came out. So that was incredibly helpful. I enjoyed the movies. I admit I
Most
enjoyed the
everyone else
movies.
did.
Yeah, and I always prefer to read the books before the movies, and I think that was the right thing to do here as well. Um, I was a little bit disappointed not to see anything of Bill the Pony, but otherwise I was pretty happy, pretty happy with the movies. Um, and in the crafting of the movies, and I'm one of those people who watched all of the credits and went back and watched all the special features on the
Mhm.
DVD and then um, then on Blu-ray and hours and hours and hours of how they made the armor and the horse work and the sword play and the scenery and all that. Oh yeah, I dig that stuff. So that was wonderful. I'm always happy to get more detail rather than less. And the length of the movies never bothered me, especially when you can pause and run to the bathroom. In the
Sure.
theater, it's a little harder, but that's me. I prefer things longer rather than shorter. Um, um, and that's just one way we're going to agree to disagree. I've always wondered if I should go back and and do the other reading. So I'm very, very grateful that you have, so you can kind of ground me in the more of the history that has not yet been revealed.
Sure, absolutely. And
I'm still struggling. Yeah, sorry, I'm still struggling to master the names and the places and where things are on the map. And I was given a blanket at one point with of Westeros from Game of Thrones,
Mhm.
and that has helped me tremendously to remember where everything was. I need one for Middle Earth.
Sure.
So anyone, if you could send me a blanket, that'd be awesome. Or a nice big tapestry for the wall. Yes.
There you go.
Back to
Um,
you.
and that's absolutely fair that you were fine with I've never gone back and watched the extended versions of the movies, and I still feel that I ought to do that one of these days. Watch all the extended movies. In fact, the Riverview before the pandemic used to, I think, on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, used to show the Riverview Theater, being a theater in Minneapolis, used to show
Right.
all extended movies as a
Right.
marathon. And of course, now I feel like I would like to do that, but I don't know if they're ever going to do it again. So
Oh, I sure hope so.
yeah,
I would
uh,
go. Yeah.
and I absolutely respect the craft that went into making the movies. So I totally respect that aspect of it. And as far as you liking things that are longer, then absolutely the Rings of Power, that is much longer. Well, I guess I don't know total runtime of the Rings of Power, at least for this season. Eventually, after we have all 5 seasons, it will be longer than the I would imagine all the extended cuts of possibly even all 6 movies. But the I I've always kind of felt that I would rather see the extended cuts of the Lord of the Rings movies as a series on
Yeah.
television. Like if I could
Yeah.
find someone who has taken a said, here are your break points. Here's where you should pause and take a break before moving on to the next episode of Fellowship of the Ring, the next episode of The Two Towers. I feel like I would probably get a better acceptance of them if I watched them in that way, much like how the Rings of Power are. Although that said, the way I watched the Rings of Power, I went over to a friend who is also another Tolkien fan, and we watched the first 2 episodes, and then I think 2 weeks later we watched the next 2 episodes, and then about a month later we watched the last 4 episodes. So
just all together, the last 4?
Together, yeah. I mean, we took a little break, at some point, but yes, we watched the last 4 episodes in a single day.
Yeah.
And I think
we've been watching them as they came out.
What's that?
We've been watching them as they came out.
Okay, you did. Okay. So excuse me. Why don't you talk about your thoughts? We'll since you don't have a lot of familiarity with the backstory of the Rings of Power, before I start talking, let's have you talk about your overall thoughts of the Rings of Power, the series.
Yeah, I'm going to go back for just one second. I think I forgot to talk about the Hobbit movies, and I'm
sure.
going to agree with you on length. Man, these are too long. And maybe it could have been 2 movies. 3 was pushing it. I mean, great special effects, but I think I actually fell apart during some of the battle sequence in the 3rd movie. So it's like, okay, moving on. I've very much enjoyed it thus far, from the beginning. I've always had something for hobbits anyway, and I immediately recognized what the Harfoots were. And I love Nori. And we had no idea who the stranger was at the time, but that was an interesting side story. And I've just been more and more impressed as the series has gone on. I don't think I can find any fault with the actors. They've all been superb.
Yep.
They did an excellent job. I didn't know what to expect of this series before it came out. I knew what we'd seen on the trailer, and it looked fine. And yeah, all the different races were more or less recognizable and pretty much what you expected. And even with a different composer, the music sounded like it was more or less on target. And I knew it was going to have a pretty wide viewing audience. Other than that, I didn't know what to expect from this series. Hoping they'd throw a decent amount of money into it so that it wouldn't fall too flat in comparison to the Jackson movies. But pacing definitely picks up as the first season goes along.
Mm-hmm.
And I just
I'm going to
finished
real quick.
Yeah.
Just to say that for all of those who are listening to us talk about this, I think both of you and I agree that we are probably not going to avoid spoilers. So if anyone is listening and doesn't want to know what happens at the end, you should probably stop. I hate to tell people to stop listening, but you should probably stop listening until you've watched all of the episodes of the first season. And then this will be on YouTube. So, you'll
I'm willing to go a few more minutes before the major spoilers, but yeah, there are going to be some pretty serious spoilers just in the first season. Yep.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Mostly done. I appreciated the widening of demographic scope, which has probably seen some criticism.
Yep.
We can get to that later. But I've enjoyed, in many cases, new female characters that really were nowhere in Tolkien's writings. They have made up some new characters to kind of fill in the blanks, including some very strong female characters, which is awesome. And who knew there were people of color? Indeed. Wow. So it's like, wow, there's actually like more than one tribe in each of the main races. And I can see people rolling their eyes at that, but I think that was a necessary addition, and I'm fine with that.
I agree. Yeah, there is there was no reason to not include um, all kinds of actors from all over the world, and to include some more strong female characters. And we really did get some great female characters in this series. In fact, I would almost argue that it is a female-led series, The Rings of Power, not just with Galadriel being essentially the main character, but
Right.
you know,
Well,
the
Galadriel and Nori, sort of, but yeah,
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 yeah, well, each of the different subplots has
yes,
has a female character that stands out, and is, if not the lead, the co-lead, I would say.
yes. And I think that just makes the whole universe more rich.
Absolutely, absolutely. So a little background on this. This is The Rings of Power is taking place in what's called the Second Age.
Second.
Um, the First Age was um, when the elves were introduced into Middle Earth, and um, goes up until the fall of Morgoth. Morgoth was Sauron's boss. He is essentially the Satan character of Tolkien's mythos, and
That's fair.
people I think mostly think Sauron would be the Satan character, but really it was Morgoth was the Satan character, and Sauron would be one of his lieutenants. And The story is taking place at the end of the First Age. There was a huge change in the map. You were talking about maps and everything. When you say maps of Middle Earth, you kind of have to say, okay, which map of Middle Earth? Because
And when, yeah,
most of the area that the First Age takes place in is now underwater. Not just, in the Rings of Power, we see a lot of it takes place in Numenor, which is, for all intents and purposes, Atlantis in
right.
Tolkien
An island
mythology,
nation.
an
Yeah,
island nation, and there are characters have dreams of it flooding. So, but lots of the mainland Middle Earth from the First Age, most of it is now underwater. And this is the Second Age. We start to get basically more of the Middle Earth that we're familiar with in the Third Age, which is where The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings takes place. So, the main character that we get introduced to at the very beginning, of course, is Galadriel, but a very different Galadriel than the one from the movies.
yes.
And I mean, she's a general. She is a warrior. And I know that there's been a bit of criticism about that, but I think her character has been great, and it really fits with this time period. One of the things that happens in the Silmarillion in the First Age is she's part of a group of elves that travels from the land of the gods into Middle Earth over an area called the Helcaraxi, which is essentially the far north of Middle Earth, and it's ice cliffs and everything, and that it was a very torturous journey for a lot of these elves that went this way. There's many other ways that elves traveled to Middle Earth, but she was one of the ones that traveled over the Helcaraxi, and this was definitely the Galadriel of that age, the one that we saw in this. So, what did you think of the comparison of this Galadriel to the other Galadriel?
I'm digging this Galadriel.
And yeah.
I love this Galadriel. Well, that helps explain why she seems much more comfortable in the cold of the north. I
Hmm.
mean, none of them are comfortable, but she is, yeah, cold, whatever. We still got it. We got to find Sauron. Come on, guys. Um, yeah, she's badass. Um, and bitter
Yep.
and driven
Hmm.
and rather single-minded and a bit of a rebel. And we see that even as a child, she always was kind of thinking a step ahead and doing her own thing. I kind of like that scene a little bit with her at the river
Yeah, I
and
really
that
want to know some of those.
sailboat, I guess, or something she'd fashioned. Yeah, yeah, that was just supposed to give her insight into her character and I guess to introduce that. I think that she lost her brother and all that. If you had lost um, husband, I think it was, and your brother to the orc armies, I can see how that backstory would feed into her becoming the person that she is as we see her here in season one.
Yeah, yeah,
I think they did an okay job with that.
yes, yeah. The interaction she has with Elrond and with, of course, now I'm blanking on his name, the king of the elves,
Just looked
who
it up. Gil-galad.
Gilgalad, yes, who
Gil-galad. Yes.
sends her back. And why am I forgetting the name of where the elves? Ah, shoot.
So it was the
Anyway,
kingdom of Lindon.
well, when he sends her on the boat and they
Oh,
go through it looks like they're going through a portal almost. Um,
going to Valinor.
Valinor, yes,
Valinor.
Valinor.
Yes.
And that was a
Into the
very interesting
west. Yeah.
into the
Yeah.
west,
Into
very
the west.
interesting. Like, okay, we don't know exactly how long it took them to travel from Middle Earth to the um border of where, but when she is just like, all right, I'm not going, and she jumps off, it's like, what's she gonna do, swim back to Middle Earth?
Yes, that's exactly what she was going to do.
Yeah.
And you believed it. And you believed it, even in her, sodden clothing and all that. Right. Right.
Yeah, so
So do you think it's chance that she ended up on that raft? Go on.
oh, well, see, this is really where stuff starts to the stuff that was not definitely not written by Tolkien. The raft, the meeting with the other people on the raft, and all of that kind of stuff. And it's kind of one of those things where, well, they had to do something just to keep the story moving, because we can't just all of a sudden say, okay, um even though elves are strong and have stamina, it would still take a while for her to swim back to Middle Earth.
Yeah.
So yeah, they pretty much had to do something to pick up that pace, and I think that they did a good job. I was gonna say, I listen to a lot of Tolkien podcasts, and most of the Tolkien podcasts I listen to are from people who do know a lot about the First Age, the Silmarillion, the Second Age, Tales of Numenor, and all that. And the biggest complaint I've been hearing is that they don't feel that these are the things. They complain about too much being changed in Rings of Power from the written works of Tolkien. And yet, a lot of these are the same people who absolutely love the Peter Jackson films. And I'm like, but wait.
But
he changed a lot of stuff from the books.
Maybe it'll just take some time.
Yeah.
I did hear that there were quite a few changes and there was some compression in terms of timing and space, that various characters would actually end up meeting each other. And I can see how that might be jarring to someone who had been taking the larger, much, much longer view, thousands and thousands of years.
Yes.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the point where this is taking place, Galadriel would be, I think, several thousand years old at this point.
Right.
And, she's even older than that in the Lord of the Rings films. So, yeah.
More
Um,
thousands. Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
elves elves live a very long time. So,
If they manage not to get stabbed or whatever. Yeah,
indeed.
exactly. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, then they get on the raft and they essentially end up in Numenor. And wow, that entrance into Numenor was pretty spectacular. Um,
Lovely.
yeah, it's a good thing that we all have large TVs nowadays and
Right.
can see these almost like they are a movie again.
Not as good on the iPad. Really, you want to watch it on a larger screen.
You really do,
One
yeah.
tip. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
The, Go ahead.
Especially for all the dark scenes, of which there are many.
Yes,
So
indeed, indeed.
the orcs need dark. So yeah, you're going to want to turn up the screen brightness just a little bit for about a third of the series. I enjoyed seeing Numenor after various mentions of it in Lord of the Rings and in those movies, and seeing those now mythic characters now come to life as much younger versions of what they were famous for later, as we meet um, uh, Elendil and his
Mm,
son
yeah.
Isildur. Where have I heard that name before? Yeah. Um, Muriel, the king's daughter, I think, right? She is, I think, new. I don't
She
think
does
she
exist
was.
in
Oh,
the
does she?
writing. Yep, she exists in the
Okay.
writing. They've changed her character a little bit,
Okay.
and
Okay.
they've adjusted, as you say, they adjusted the timing and everything. And in the writings of Tolkien, um, Galadriel and Muriel never met. Um, so this would be a new story for both of them. Um,
Compression. Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, they um uh Tar
The king?
our fair zone actually. Not
Oh, oh, oh.
not yeah. Um, these are all characters that exist in the stories of Numenor. But yeah, they are adjusting. They're fiddling with the timing to fit the story that they're telling. Um,
Dramatic license.
yep,
Yes.
yep.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, one of the great enjoyments I get from this is hearing the names. Like at one point where Elrond is meeting with um, Celebrimbor, and they are talking about the Anvil of Feanor or the Hammer of Feanor. I forget which artifact it is, but just the fact that they mentioned Feanor, I'm sitting there and I'm
Right.
like, they said Feanor. Oh my god, I know who Feanor is. Like
Geekgasm moments. Yes.
two
Yes.
2 years ago, I would not have recognized these names. When they're with the dwarves and they talk about Aule, like Aule was
Uh-huh.
the god that created the dwarves and everything. So, hearing these names just gave me um a nerdgasms, yes, very much so. And it's one of those things where I don't want to say that they shouldn't be telling a good story, but just hearing them talk about this deep Tolkien lore knocks it up a few notches for me.
Absolutely. Do you think they did a pretty decent job in respecting the audience's intelligence and not over explaining things? Do you think they struck that balance well enough in
I
terms
do.
of making these wayward references to uh, gods or higher beings or legends?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, like they can't just stop and say, they mention Aule. and they can't just stop and then give a history of Owlay, or even
Right.
maybe on the Blu-ray they can do pop-up video style, like they
Right.
do on some of the Doctor Who DVDs. Bring it back to Doctor Who.
Right.
But
Yes.
yeah, to say Owlay was the one of the Valar who created the dwarves, without Iluvatar's knowing it, and all this. Iluvatar being the supreme god. But yeah, I think they did it with enough context that the audience would not get bored with lots of exposition, and yet still be able to get contextually who these characters are. So, and
Right. Just by having Durin speaking of Aule with reverence,
exactly.
that's giving you pretty decent context. And the name comes up at least maybe 2 or 3 times, like in the middle of season 1, I think, and toward the end, if I remember correctly. And I find that just the right amount to whet my curiosity. And yeah, I had to go and look that up, but I respect that they let me do that.
Yep.
And the Valar and who is this Adar guy anyway? And I suspect it's probably going to be this way on all the various forms of the recordings that come out, but at least on the Amazon Prime captions, the Elvish is coming out in Elvish.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
And the Sindarin is coming out. It's not in English, so I'm having to look that up.
Yeah, and I love that too. When they have the closed captioning and it's not English, and they say Quenya or Sindar, and
Yes.
I'm like, oh my
Yes.
goodness, wow, they are really doing a good job with that.
Yep.
So yeah, and I'm
they really should. To see. Half of its language. Tolkien was into language. They better get that right, and I think they mostly have.
Yep. And now people are knowing how to pronounce some of these names that maybe they've read, and not like it's not Celebrimbor, it's Celebrimbor. It's Celebrimbor. A hard beat, yeah, and right. Just all those little things and everything. So the attention to detail, I feel, has been really good.
Yes, I think they would have been roundly thrashed if they had not. So good for them.
So you said that you particularly like Nori. So I maybe I should ask this. What was your favorite plot line of the series? Which were the segments where you were just very excited to get back to these characters after, you're like, oh, good, we're back to the Harfoots, or oh, great, we're back to the dwarves?
Yes, I suppose I really should say like the Forging of the Rings, but no, it was way before that. And they had me grabbed into Nori and the Stranger, or the big fella, and to maybe a little bit lesser extent, Poppy and Sadok and all of the Harfoots. Yeah. Okay, so we're giving some pretty glaring physical clues that they got the big hairy feet. Harfoot, right? Could that be a linguistic? Yeah. I wonder who they could possibly be the ancestors of. But they're nomads. And so clearly there's been some change, some evolution there. And but yet they love their food. They're very cautious with their food, and boy, they're hard workers. They're not necessarily all fun loving, although the Harfoot kids give us a glimpse of that first few scenes of Fellowship, where the hobbits are really enjoying life and mostly carefree. These are more hard scrabble folk, and they very much make that clear. because they migrate it's at least 3 or 4 times a year, I think, from what I gathered, at least online. Um, and if a family gets left behind, they get left behind. And that scene where
Which is
they're
ironic.
remembering all of those who've been left behind. I love that.
Yeah. Well, their
Love
slogan,
that.
no one gets left behind, except then they were going to
Except
leave.
they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, not quite the Marines, but um, and that they kind of make their kind of tough way of life a little bit into a game,
Yeah.
like the chanting along. Um,
Oh, and Poppy's song was just
Nobody
so,
walks alone.
oh
Oh
my,
yes.
that was such a great scene.
So apparently she's an orphan,
Yep.
which they make clear in that kind of remembrance scene that she lost her whole family. And I get, has she been sort of adopted by Nori's family? Maybe at least she was when they hit the trail. So I developed a little bit more respect for Poppy. She seems to be the Sam to Nori, the Sam to Frodo.
Sure.
She's kind of
Yeah.
that way for Nori. She's a little bit more common sense, whereas Nori clearly has her mind off in the horizon, does not want to be exactly where she is. So yes, I love that. Pretty much everything about the Harfoots, and I was, of course, as curious as anyone else who the heck this ranger was, which it
Sure.
does finally get revealed to us.
Absolutely.
I guess the other story that probably most interested me would probably be Isildur, at least after a while. It took me a little while to warm up to him because he seemed to be just kind of lost
Yeah.
at first. But his eventual loyalty toward his friends and his wanting to be a hero for Numenor and his relationship with his horse. You gotta love the guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess that'd be my second favorite. Yeah.
It's
How
kind of
about you?
to think that he's kind of, to draw a comparison, he's gonna kind of be the Anakin of this story,
Oh God,
because we
he
know
is. He is.
what's gonna happen, you know.
Yeah.
Where and I mean it kind of is like watching Anakin in the Clone Wars, where you do you get attached to this character, that, and not that Isildur, who doesn't give up the ring, is the same as Darth Vader, but there's this whole thing where it's like, okay, all this bad stuff is going to happen, and we know that it's eventually coming, but in the meantime, we're supposed to kind of be on the side of this character and everything, which is just an interesting kind of method of storytelling.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Supposedly the second age, does it come to an end with Isildur vanquishing this version of Sauron? So we know that happens. We know that happens.
Right. Yes. Yes. I believe that.
And in fact, we saw it, I guess. Yeah.
Actually, I'm not sure if the second age ends with the fall of Numenor or with that. So it could. Spoilers: Numenor is going to fall. These premonitions that they have of the flood, that's going to happen eventually. So, yeah. I wasn't a huge. Numenor was beautiful, but I definitely was more interested in what was going on in Middle Earth than in Numenor. Particularly with the and of course I'm forgetting the names of the characters, the Southlanders.
Yep.
So that was, oh my gosh, when they started going into all the stuff that was happening in the Southland, there were times where my jaw just absolutely dropped. This is where we're probably going to start getting into spoiler territory, but when the when the mechanisms started going off in that
Mm,
fort or whatever it was, the
mm.
temple, yeah, and all of a sudden the volcano erupts. I'm like, oh my gosh,
Oh, that's what that, yes.
we just saw the origin of Mordor. Yep,
Right,
yeah,
right.
and that just it kind of blew my mind a little bit. That volcano is Mount Doom. I'm pretty sure it's got to be Mount
Yeah,
Doom.
at least that's
So,
what the great interwebs seem to think. I think that's true. And it certainly lays waste to the Southlands. So now we know why Mordor looks the way it does.
yep,
We're ignoring
absolutely.
science a little bit here, so don't read too much into the science of it because it really should be really fertile land now. But
Yeah,
yeah, but it's the darkness and the spirit and magic that make it still gray and hazy. Yeah, right.
yeah.
But I thought that was well done, and they did a pretty decent job of bringing off that. I don't think it would have been a pyroclastic flow. Sorry, I can't turn off the science
No,
because I
absolutely. I
don't
think
see how
that's great.
Galadriel would have survived that. But in fact, yeah, I don't quite know how
They're
Galadriel
tough.
survives that because she doesn't have one of the rings yet. Spoilers. Um,
Elves are
but
tough.
I love that. I love that sequence as well. And I think it was the water cascading down into maybe a pocket of magma or something, and then boom, is that what happened
I
in that
believe
scene?
that
I think
that's
so.
what. Yeah, yeah. I'm probably going to rewatch the whole thing before season two comes out.
I'm going
That
to have to do a third watch
sure,
to
sure.
pick up on some of the other things. Yeah.
Um,
Um,
so well, okay. So did you? What was your thought process as we're going along with who the big reveal at the end? Were you surprised? Did you expect that was going to happen? And I'll let you talk about it first before we actually say who it is we're actually.
right. I, 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 I wasn't, I was a little surprised they did the reveal of the big baddie. Not talking Adar. Uh, um, this soon in the series.
Well, did you think Adar was actually Sauron?
I know we were supposed to think that for at least an episode or two.
Yep,
Um, I actually ended up feeling a lot more compassion for the guy
indeed. Yeah.
toward the end. Yeah. Even though I guess he's supposed to be sort of the first, or sorry, Uruk, the first Uruk. Um, I I was more interested in who was going to end up being Gandalf, and going into this series, I didn't even know if they were necessarily going to introduce that character.
I was surprised that they did as many introductions. I'm glad that they did as many introductions as they did in this
Yeah,
first season. In fact, that was one of the things I was afraid of, was that we were going to have like these open-ended stories and just keep getting more mysteries and more mysteries and more mysteries. I'm like, let's resolve one mystery before going on to the next mystery. But at the end of it, I was actually kind of surprised that they revealed as much as they did in the first season.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if I would have preferred that they wait a little bit longer on some of that, but it kind of makes me wonder what more what more is coming if we really have four more seasons. I mean, I guess I'm glad that they didn't wait till the very end just in case they get canceled, um, but I hope they have some other big stuff coming
Yeah.
because
Well,
I have best
yeah,
wishes for this series.
sure, sure. So, at first we were gonna think we were supposed to think that Adar was Sauron,
Right.
just from a pure appearance standpoint, you know, and then later, because of those characters that show up in, I think is it the second to the last episode or the last episode, that find the big guy, the stranger.
Who are those three? Do
That
we
again,
know?
they're characters that I don't believe exist in,
Oh,
so they're new characters. But we then are supposed to think that Nori's friend is Sauron before it
Oh, we
finally,
were supposed to.
yeah,
Obviously, they're leading us down that path for quite a few minutes there
yeah,
as they try to get him to reveal his powers and remember that he's Lord Sauron.
yep,
Um,
and
that
then
was
it,
clearly deliberate.
yep, it isn't until the last episode that we finally get the reveal of who Sauron is, and
Hmm.
that of course is, big spoiler, Halbrand, the person on the raft that Galadriel meets in the second episode, is Sauron. And
That she's
the
almost falling in love with. Yeah. Oops.
yeah, the
Yeah.
person she's been hunting for generations at this point, generations of humans anyways, is
Right
the
in
person
front of her face.
right in front of her face. um
Yeah.
well, and so there was something that happened where there's a scene where Galadriel and Halbrand are standing at a railing looking out over the water, and you can see both of them framed in the same shot. And I'm like, wow, those are some really pretty people. Which then later I'm like, oh, at this point, Sauron was supposed to be very fair of face. Like he was supposed to be someone that was able to influence people and influence them by being very charismatic, not being this hugely powerful Maiar, but just being so hugely charismatic. And so it absolutely makes sense for Halbrand to now be Sauron.
Yeah.
And yeah, that now here's hoping that they don't somehow say, "Oh no, we were just kidding about that too." Sauron is somebody completely different. I can't imagine that they're going to do that in season 2, but I
I
guess I
think
don't.
they've gone too far off that ledge at this point because that last episode with Galadriel's, I don't know what to call it, dream sequence or something, where he's trying to explain to her that, oh yeah, what really, what he wants for Middle Earth is good. It's just what she wants, and they should work together and make sure
Yep,
the land stays in light and the darkness doesn't take over from um, Adar and the orcs
yep,
taking over the land. Um, so by then it's pretty dang clear if you haven't been paying attention up till now. He was leaving hints the whole way
yep, yep,
watching it the second time around. He did not, well, he didn't tell the whole truth, but he really didn't lie.
yep, yep.
He was telling her, there's a particular sequence, I want to say episode 4, because I was paying attention this time, where they're having a conversation. Was it at the railing? I
Yeah,
don't know.
I don't remember.
Where he's telling her how to just attacking your enemies, making them fear you, something like that was maybe not the most effective way to go. That you should um, devise a way for your enemies to conquer and manage their fears,
Mm-hmm.
and then you no to master their fears, and then you can master them.
Yep.
Gee, what could he possibly be referring to?
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
That was great. And I think it takes a second watching to really see that because I did not remember that.
Um, and then the shot of his eyes, and I know that it's meant to be a kind of uh not foreshadowing, but a reference to the Eye of Sauron from the Peter Jackson films, because
Oh
they
yeah,
do the shot of his eyes and they become like cat slits, like the Eye of Sauron in the Peter
that's
Jackson
at the
films.
very end. Is that right? Yeah,
It is, yes, yeah.
he's going
During
into Mordor.
stuff, yeah. Um, and
Nice.
it's just a quick flash, but it's there. And but what I never thought of until I read the Silmarillion and stuff. Well, actually, not even the Silmarillion, because this is in the other kind of abandoned versions. Well, I guess the Silmarillion was kind of abandoned as well, But there's a version of Sauron who was essentially a giant cat, Tevildo, Prince of Cats, and so the fact that his eye has always kind of been
Oh,
as a cat's eye, I'm like,
yeah,
oh, it finally occurs to me. Yeah, but yeah, there have been in Tolkien's writings there were several
sure.
versions of Sauron before we got what we got in the Lord of the Rings, and one of those was Tevildo, Prince of Cats, and essentially this was in the Beren and Luthien story, or
Oh,
one version of the Beren and Luthien story. He was a cat. Um, so Tolkien seemed to like dogs better than cats for some reason, but I
oh,
still
Halbrand said he'd been many different people or had many different names. Sure, why not?
that that's true. That's true. So, um, what else? What have we not really talked about so far? We have about
Um,
minutes left, I think.
Indeed we do. Um, I returning to the Southlanders.
Hmm.
Um, it was nice to see just that was a that was a representation of normal men, not the exalted Numenorians
Sure.
who had a history with the elves, even if they didn't want to remember that they did, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and a badass single mom
Yep.
and her son, um, who both kind of cause all the trouble, but also are kind of the saviors. And I just really enjoyed that. I thought I found them very believable. And
I'm very curious as to where their stories are gonna go. The son, like there's something with this son character that we don't know yet. We haven't
is he
definitely haven't.
new? Is he new for the
He
series?
he
Is there
isn't
any
that
mention
well
of
unless he has a different name. But
right?
uh,
Yeah, right.
yeah, those three characters, the woman, the son, and I'm assuming his father, the elf. I mean that is my big assumption
Oh,
is that he
okay.
that he's a half elf.
The
Um,
father who is conveniently out of the picture and no one knows who he is.
yeah,
Right. Okay, sure.
for that I cannot remember any of their three names. Um,
Arondir,
Arondir,
Bronwyn, and Theo, which is a really kind of
Theo.
ordinary English name, but okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Theo is Arondir's son.
Oh,
I would be very surprised if that does not end up being the case.
neat.
So, but yeah, there's something going on with that character, and I will be curious. I'm very curious
Yes.
to see how that goes. Um, I I want to say one of my favorite characters is, and I'm Durin's wife. What is her name?
Disa with the
Tisa.
great singing voice.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
yes. She is
Yes.
just wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I'm really glad that they included that character. I know that
Me
prior to
too.
the show, she was one of the ones that got a lot of um, fan. I don't want to say hatred, but fan complaints beforehand. But I'm really hoping that now that they've seen her on screen, that most of that goes
Mhm.
away. You know,
Oh, she
they
chews the scenery. I love her.
yeah, she was just great. And I'm hoping that we get even more stuff in upcoming seasons with her. You know, we're definitely going to be spending more time with the dwarves because we have to do the forging of the dwarven rings,
Oh,
and we
yeah.
have to deal with the fact that they woke up the Balrog.
Right. Right.
Yep.
Right.
So that was another one of the big complaints I heard on the podcast was the origin of Mithril, being that it
Was
was
that
and
compressed
well that was kind of
or
made up, I
changed?
guess. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
shoot.
That that
Okay.
that it was the they talked about the trees, and that it was Mithril now. according to the Rings of Power, is a combination of light from the trees of Valinor that got brought
Hmm.
to Middle Earth and stuff. I'm like, I'm fine with it, you know. Again, it's one of these things like I'm like, oh, I didn't think of that, but it was one of these things that I heard a lot of complaints about, but it doesn't bother
Oh,
me.
I- okay. I thought I had read um, something about a portion of the light or some embodiment of the light falling down through the mountains,
Yep,
taking root
that they
at the
talked
heart
about
of the
in
mountain
Star.
or something, and that was
Yeah,
Mithril.
yep,
Uh, that still sort of works. I mean, it didn't really
yeah,
say how the Mithril got there. They just found it. That you know,
yep.
um, I'm not going to quibble with that, but
My bigger quibble, I think, was that um the elves couldn't survive without that seemed to be a little bit of a stretch to me, that the dying of the trees what was causing the elves to fade. I'm like, I don't really like that part. That's the midi chlorians for me, I guess.
it did seem rather sudden that
Yeah,
here's this great age of the kingdom of Linden and the elves, and now they're all dying or else they have to emigrate. Um,
yeah,
but it's very yeah, even I, as simplistic as my knowledge is of this world, uh, clearly they are tied to the light and the
yep,
light of the tree from Valinor is 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 maintaining them.
yep,
So anything that challenges the light. So here comes this mineral that embodies again light. Um, it works, but it was simplistic.
yep,
It works
yep.
for the elves. They're
Sure.
always bathed in light. At least they were in Lord of the Rings, you know. But
Yeah.
yeah.
There was and I suppose that's more first age. Like they were not allowed to go home by the
Mm,
Valar during the first age, but this is the second
mm.
age, so yeah, the rules are different now, I guess. So it's one of those things where I'm just like, I'm not gonna think about it too hard. So
A little bit like some parts of Doctor Who that we love so
yep,
much.
yep, exactly. So what do you think? We we have four, I think, four more seasons after this. Um,
Yeah.
and it. Who are you? What are you excited to find out in the upcoming seasons?
I'm excited to see what the heck Nori and the big fella are going to get up to.
Sure. Yeah.
I because
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yep.
I don't think we know, and that's great. It's not a nice not knowing. Um, ultimately, I would like to see again a little bit like you said about Anakin becoming Darth Vader.
Yep. Well, and I have a
So how
feeling that
does Sauron get vanquished? Right,
yeah, I have a feeling
right.
that that's where we're going to end up in the last season, is seeing the I have here's my prediction for how the Rings of Power series is going to end. It's going to end with Isildur losing the ring,
Mm.
it being washed down a river, and being found by a certain character.
Ah, yes. Yeah,
And
yeah.
is that character going to be played by Andy Serkis? I wonder. That would be interesting.
Well,
Uh,
um, mocap, sure. They can make anything
well,
happen.
I mean, the
Well,
thing
no,
is,
he was more human. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
yeah, he would have been.
On,
Well, he
on
was
the
more
other hand, they could still
Harfoot.
do that. Yeah, yeah. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because he wasn't. He. I don't remember if he was a Harfoot. So in the appendices, in the histories of the hobbits, they do talk about the Harfoots and a couple of other proto-Hobbit tribes. So the name
Okay.
Harfoot is something that is in the writing, and I forget what the other ones are
Good.
called. And I don't remember if Smeagol was a Harfoot or if he was one of the. I think he was one of the other tribes.
Like a river fishing
Yeah.
ancestor. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Yep.
So yeah, I my prediction is that
Offshoot.
we're gonna see those final battles. We're gonna see Isildur, um, the fight between Isildur, and he's going to capture the ring from Sauron and then refuse to give it up. Essentially, those scenes that we have in the movie, we're actually going to have expanded versions of those scenes in the series. I think is what we're going to
Oh, I
see.
hope so. Um, we're seeing three of the rings
Mm-hmm.
taking shape at the end of this season. Spoiler. So we now need to see how the seven for the
Yep.
dwarves are built and the nine for men. And
Yep.
I wonder if we're going to see that across the course of the next 2, 3 seasons, but I don't think it's going to end there.
Yep.
I'm more likely to believe what you're saying in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Yeah. There. I think some of the fan speculation is that Theo might be one of the Nazgul.
Oh no, yeah, you
I
might be right
don't know.
there.
Yeah.
Shoot, no,
If
Theo.
if not the Witch King himself, but well, the Witch King is supposed to be from the north,
Hmm.
I think, so maybe not. But yeah, that's what we get for the next couple of years now. Is we have all this speculation of what they're gonna do and everything, and the fact that we've actually opened the gates now. Um, you know, rest in peace, Christopher Tolkien, but he was the one who basically was like, nope, you're never going to see a Silmarillion movie. Well, now
Oh,
Tolkien, Tolkien's uh, Tolkien's direct children have all now passed into Valinor or whatever, um, and so now the grandchildren. I Once we start getting to grandchildren and great
hmm.
grandchildren, I have a feeling they're going to be like, we like money. Give us money. You can make the Silmarillion. You can do these old tales. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what we have coming down the pipe.
Do you think we'll have another future series that'll be the first age?
To be honest, I absolutely do. It may still be 10 years out, but I
Mm.
think we will actually have the first age. There are so many good stories in the first age. The awakening of the elves, Beren and Luthien, Turin Turambar, just all of these, and some of it is stuff that um, Tolkien really got a lot of detail in, and some of it is stuff that never got finished. So they can go both routes. They can tell the full story of Beren and Luthien without having to change too much, or they can tell the story about the fall of Gondolin, and they'll have to come up with a lot of stuff. So yeah, I'm kind of excited to see where things are going to go. So I
Um,
think we're just about. Go ahead.
just about, yeah, and of course, what Sauron's up to.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
I think we know where that's going. At some point, becomes more fond of orcs, I guess. Exactly how that happens, or at least as a tool, so that he can master men. Or is it that he masters men and and then the orcs become a tool? I'm not quite sure how that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Um, as you
Well,
said, he was a master manipulator. Mm.
what I'm really hoping is that this series leads people to read the Silmarillion, read Unfinished Tales, read Book of Lost Tales, all that kind of stuff. So that is my hope, anyways.
As literature, do those stand up well as stories, or are they more like reference books?
So
What do you think?
The Silmarillion is collected and written as a narrative. Um, it is not as hard as I think people make it out to be. Um, the Unfinished Tales of Numenor and Middle Earth, the Book of Lost Tales Part 1 and 2, The Lost Road, all the books that make up the history of Middle Earth, those are kind of a cross between narrative and a reference book, because what they all are is they are different versions of the stories that Tolkien wrote, and then Christopher, his son, took all of his notes and compiled them and and published them with commentaries about his kind of thinking in the writing and everything. So, and it is truly fascinating. It is like reading the director's cut for all of the, or it's like reading the director's commentary for a Blu-ray in book form. So yeah,
Oh, so
that's
I
what
got to do that. Okay.
And the first 5 books of the history of Middle Earth are all about the first age and second age. And then starting with book 6 of the history of Middle Earth, we actually get all the different versions of the Lord of the Rings. And that is going to be, I'm about to start those. That'll be after the first of the year. So
yeah. Perfect. Well, thanks, Jason. It's really been most informative having you as part of this panel, and I'm really glad we did this. Any final thoughts before we say we're done, because we're just about out of time?
I just hope that people are, like I said, I hope people are springboarding from the Rings of Power into reading some of the stuff beyond Lord of the Rings. And I'm excited to see where the next season is going to take us.
Absolutely. I'm excited to do some more reading.
Great.
And make sure you check out the rest of Console Room 2023. 10 years in the TARDIS. It's been 10 years. Oh my gosh.
10 years. That's right. Whether you are a virtual attendee or whether you're going to be with us in person, I look forward to seeing you all. And thank you all for attending. Bye, everybody.
Bye.